This is Worth Kick Legend. Today I'm going to break down why switching the Southpaw feels like you have less range. So you may have seen my episode with Joy Combat where he talked about switching the Southpaw behind some strikes, and he mentioned that you got to make up those missing 2 inches when you switch to Southpaw. He has a very practical solution. Just get closer to the guy. Obviously, if you're sparring and in the ring, that is the solution. But it really brought out the martial arts geek in me, and I wanted to make a video today explaining why that's the case. And I'm going to present the geometry of it, and Shawn's going to talk about the physiology of it. If we're fighting an orthodox fighter, which we're going to use the black line here, and I'm orthodox, and his head is dead center, my left jab is going to be the exact same distance as my right jab. That's true. However, it often feels like it's farther away in sparring, and we're going to talk about some reasons why that is. First of all, when we're boxing, we actually tend to fade away from the center line when we're doing defense, right? Unless I'm slipping to the outside, I don't do this. So there's a bias in how I move my body when I'm thinking defense, which means I'm slipping to my right and backwards. Now, regarding my left and right jab, it's the same distance change backwards if we're Southpaw or Orthodox, but you notice if I'm slipping to my right, I'm actually closer to the Orthodox fighter's lead hand and farther from the Southpaw fighter's lead hand. And so here we have the blue is actually less than the pink, which is why I don't have as much ground to cover when I'm fighting orthodox to orthodox. If I'm trying to get to the outside of the lead foot, as Joey mentioned in basic Southpaw strategy, again, if there's a delta here off of his lead foot, he's once again, even if his head is dead center, he's farther away from the Southpaw's lead hand than he is from the orthodox fighter's lead hand, because if this is the center for them, you notice that he's closer to the orthodox left side and farther from the Southpaw right side. So those are the basic geometrical reasons why fighting Southpaw against orthodox not only feels farther away, but is farther away for the lead jab. A related note, you're actually closer for the rear hand power shot, right? Everything that was true for the jab is inverted for the rear hand punch. So the Southpaw's rear cross, which is a power shot, is actually closer than the rear hand power shot for the orthodox to orthodox. So just to illustrate the geometry that I talked about on the whiteboard, you notice orthodox to orthodox, I have a straight line, and I can kind of have this kind of subtended solid angle, wide range of viable targets. Exact same distance, Southpaw, I'm running into his lead hand now. I got to get around it. Either I got to step off, or arc around it. I got to curve. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so if I have to curve, that means my punch is going to feel shorter.
This is Shawn. My background is a massage therapist. I've practiced martial arts since 1992. In my practice, I currently work with athletes. One of the things that we look at when we're looking at that shorter side in the Southpaw stance is the volume of repetition that you put into one side. Like Roy said, if you're fighting, you're doing like 90, 10, or even 100, right? And as he's noted, and I've noted as I've gotten older, we're kind of looking more for that mythical unicorn of symmetry in our movement patterning. So what'll happen is that you'll go to switch sides and feel like, man, I just don't have the reach here, especially like within the sparring. If we go back here, and if you've been training for a long time, and you've done tens of thousands of repetition in that left lead, what's going to happen is your brain is going to remember that. And that's the critical thing that we want to remember here, is that our brain is doing all the rest of the stuff. If we take the brain out of the head and set it aside, the muscles don't move because it has nothing to tell it to do that. It also stores programming. So programming is throwing those thousands of repetitions in one lead. When you switch to the opposite side, your brain remembers that on this side, my jab is long. On this side, now my jab is short. It feels like it's shorter because I was crossing here. I really have to rotate into this to get any type of distance. Here, it just doesn't feel the same. It's not the same mechanics. Even though it's a straight line punch, it doesn't start the same. But when I throw a cross in my left lead, what do I have to do? I really have to drive it from the back hip. Well, when I go here, it's more of the front hip. So your brain remembers that movement patterning. That's why it's really good to do what Roy was talking about and going like, okay, so if I want to explore this symmetry, actually going like 60-40 or 70-30 for a period of time. Because it's a sheer volume of repetitions. Volume of repetition is what's going to get it done, and it's also the mindfulness and the paying attention to what your body is doing in that volume of repetition. So let's look at something that could possibly help us to change some of that shortening and lack of coordination on that right side of the body. One of the things that I discovered in about 2007, due to some of my own personal injuries, was the kettlebell. So everybody now knows what the kettlebell is, but in 2007, everybody was, when I would show this to people, they were like, the hell is that thing with that's a cannonball with a handle. What am I doing with that? Along with the swing, which is something that I suggest to a lot of athletes as well, but for strikers in building some of that strength and core stability, I think the Turkish Get-up is a fantastic tool for this. You're going to start on your side. You'll roll to your back, pick the bell up. Now, for strikers, this point is really super helpful in that the bell forces you to stabilize your wrist. A lot of people will have problems with like some weak wrists when they're striking. This will help this out a ton, which will help you with your coordination and your feeling of stability and power. So I keep the bell above my shoulder. I'm going to spin around here so we can watch this. Here's a piece that I see a lot of people make some errors on. A lot of people will sit straight up with this movement. I always think of like, if this is a heavy bell, like a 100-pound bell, I don't want to sit straight up with it. I actually want to get off to the side a little bit. And when I'm getting off to the side, this kind of looks a little bit like my jab, right? Because my shoulder is long here. So I'm going to use my heel to rotate off to the side. I'm now going to come up to my forearm, and now there's where that crunching movement comes. So I'm using some of my core there. I'm also using some shoulder stability here on both sides. I'm going to come up to my hand, and what I want to feel now is I want to feel that I have a good solid post with my right hand, with the hand that's in back, my left foot, and the heel of my right foot. Here's a little variant that I think is really good for strikers as well. Sometimes what you'll see with the get-up is you'll see people switch their legs. But I like the hard bridge because I like that hip extension here, which is really helpful for striking and kicking as well. So now I'm going to thread my leg back and through. I like this position here again because I have a ton of core stability that I have to use here, and I'm also learning to stabilize my shoulder in space. I come above my head. Again, here's some shoulder stability. I'm going to scissor or lunge up and then step forward. Now here's the tricky part. I'm going to reverse it and come back. I'm going to windshield wiper my leg. Now I'm looking up at the bell again. Hand goes down on the floor. Again, I'm in this position where I'm really needing some shoulder stability and my core has to be stable. I shoot that leg through, I bridge up, butt comes to the ground, slide my hand out, grab the bell, go to the side. And then I just reverse the movement to the other side. You're really needing to learn to examine parts of your body and where you're actually stabilizing from. A lot of your strength is going to come from here. We all know that the strength comes from your core, but people miss out on your shoulder stabilizers in strength as well. If I punch and I can't get this extension out, it's going to shorten the striking. Because I'm not using this, because I'm not really extending here until the last minute, Or a lot of times when you hit a guy with a cross and you hit a guy with a cross hard here, it's actually jammed a little bit. In my jab, when I hit a good jab, I'm always extending. And I think the bell will help you to gain that shoulder stabilization on the opposite side as well.
So I hope you found that lesson useful. If you're anywhere close to Fenton, I highly recommend checking out Shawn Kitzman at Synergy Movement Therapy. Check out his Facebook page. He writes really thoughtful, analytical articles that I love watching, and he does have a video blog as well where he talks about some of his work. I'll put the links in the video description. So please check him out if you have any injuries or need to improve your performance.
Yeah, if you have any performance improvement things like, I'm not able to do X, Y, and Z, I'm able to extend my hip, I don't really have pain, but my hip doesn't really come through, we can also check those things out.
And as a martial artist, of course, he understands where you're coming from if that's why you're coming to him. So as far as Shawn Kitzman, Synergy Movement Therapy, keep your chin down, elevate your striking.